Hello and welcome to Embodied Art Studio. Today I'm going to teach a dry brushing technique that is fantastic for daytime clouds. So if you're trying to get happy, fluffy clouds in your painting, this is going to be the demonstration for you. Brushes. So what I have here is I have two brushes I'm going to use. We call these our dry brushing brushes in our studio because they have a nice resistance to them. So for dry brushing, you're gonna want to push a little bit harder and you're not gonna want the brush to like flop over. So these do a good job of staying in place and having a little bit less give to them. And they're cylinder shaped and they have nice surface area on the top of them as well. So when we dry brush, we're going to want to move, like if the camera is the canvas, I'm going to be moving this way on the canvas using the tip of my brush. So there's nice surface area on both of the tips of these brushes. And they are kind of coarse too. So they're going to give us that nice fluffy, kind of scratchy cloud-like texture. So these are our two tools that we're going to be using for dry brushing our clouds. Okay, so the shape of a cloud is really organic. And when I say really organic versus geometric, what it means is that it can't be named. Like the shape cannot be named as a circle or a square, but it can be described. All right, so it's lumpy. It is kind of circly. I like when clouds kind of like stretch across the canvas, so they're kind of like elongated lumps. And there's my fancy art terminology for you. But knowing that, I can start towards the middle and make these circular moments. So what I have on my brush right now is just white and just a little bit of white. Notice how you can see some of the bristles at the end here. And I start to just kind of like clump them together. Some smaller circular ones, some bigger ones, maybe towards the side over here. And I'm just using the paint that's on my canvas still. So I didn't get more paint on my brush, just using the paint on my canvas. And starting to spread it a little bit more. Now, if the paint is starting to dry, and you're gonna start to try and work something that doesn't wanna be work, what we call that is digging ourselves in a hole. So now we can see that we have like white around the edges here, and I'm really pushing, and what's happening is I'm actually like digging a hole, right? And I'm getting more of the canvas, the dry canvas that's behind here is showing through. Not what we're looking for. So as it's starting to really actually dry, there's another little hole I started to create right here. We wanna just let it be. All right, so maybe I grab a little bit more paint and I start to thicken up this cloud in other areas. Let's do another cloud down here. You know, maybe I want this cloud to overlap this cloud at some point, because clouds don't just like stagger all the time next to each other with equal balanced spaces away from each other. Sometimes they overlap each other. So what's happening here that I've overlapped these clouds together is they've pretty much become one cloud. So this is where the blue comes in. This is where we start to get like a slight shift from light to dark to tell what is in front and what is behind. So I have my blue here, but maybe I just want to lighten that up a little bit. These are daytime clouds, so the shadow won't be too intense. It won't be too dark. So you want to just lighten this blue up a little bit. And I'm going to just use the paint that's already on my brush here. Maybe take a little bit off at first because I can always add more paint onto the brush later. It's better to go too little than too much at first. So first I want to decide what cloud is in front of which cloud. So I'm thinking that I actually want this cloud in front and this cloud behind. So I'm going to decide where the bottom of this cloud is, and I think this is looking like a very good bottom of the cloud here. First, make sure that your clouds are dry. A dry brushing technique does dry fairly quick, but if it's not dry, just hit it with a blow dryer beforehand. Okay, so I'm going to go right underneath the cloud here and use that blue to show that this cloud is casting a slight shadow onto this cloud. Now, while my paint is still wet, I'm going to wash out my brush, dry it as well as I can. It's okay if it's just a little bit damp. And I'm going to soften the end of my blue here using my clean brush. So what that does is it just kind of like pulls out that blue paint that was already on my canvas, so it kind of fades into the white. So now we can start to see that this cloud is in fact on top of this cloud. So where are some other moments that I want to show that are deeper than these pure white moments? Maybe I want to get towards the bottom of my clouds. All right, so now it's time for a second layer. We do second layers so that our paint is nice and rich, it has nice texture, and I think one of the most important reasons is the color is truer when you put on a second layer. All right, so that my whites are going to be a little bit more white and my shadows will be like a little bit more blue. So I also like to call the second layer chance for a second opportunity. Right? Chance for a second opportunity means where can I shape my cloud a little bit better, right? I'm putting on a second layer after it's dry, so I can change the shape of my cloud. I can pull it out a little bit more. I can change where my shadows are. So having that chance for a second opportunity really allows me to get a new perspective, step back from it, come back, all right, and say, what do I like? What do I don't like? And let's go from there. So here we go. Chance for a second opportunity. Notice how I'm taking my pure whites. I'm kind of like icing my cloud, and when I say icing, I'm like frosting the tips of them with my pure white again. And that same technique where I was pulling the paint down, I'm using for the pure white again into my shadows. So I'm starting with my pure whites up towards the top. Giving a little rinse or cleaning out my brush with a towel and then pulling that pure white down into my shadows. There's a little bit less white on my brush now, so it shouldn't be like too intense. It shouldn't be too white as we pull it into the shadow. We're looking for a nice light blue in there. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back to my shadow colors. Everything I just did was just white. So I'm gonna get back that light blue on my brush, and I'm also gonna reinforce my shadow moments as well. And just like I did with the white, I'm gonna reinforce my shadows, and then I'm gonna use a clean brush to pull it into my lighter moments. Now my white did dry fairly quick, so if it's not dry, make sure that you dry it before you do the second layer with your shadows. So as I kept going, these clouds kind of got conjoined again, and I still want this one to feel like it's on top. All right, so bringing back some shadow colors underneath on top of this cloud will help show that the top one is on top. Now we can have this one a little bit more on top. This one falls a little bit more on the shadows. Now as I keep going, I keep layering, I keep reinforcing my whites and my shadows. I can go back and forth. It's okay if you're using the white and you say, well, I went a little bit too much here, so maybe I clean out my brush and I go back to my shadow, and I can even blend while it's still wet as well. As long as it's still wet and it's not like on its way to being dry, because we don't want to dig ourselves into a hole. I always find that in those like final moments, I always want to like put a little bit more pure white right on the tip of my cloud. So maybe I grab my little baby brush here. And I just kind of frost the tips of my clouds here. Right at the end, I'm like, okay, we need some little friends here. Sometimes we have like kind of like an idea of a cloud. You'll find those are very close to the horizon line because they're farther away. So maybe down towards the bottom. But they don't have to be. You can have some fluffy random moments here and there to just kind of break up your sky a little bit more. And notice, I don't have to go circular the entire time. If I'm going for these skinnier clouds, sometimes I'll kind of just like scratch my brush back and forth horizontally and then catch a couple moments where I'm still using that circular motion. You know, and if they need a little bit of shadow, we've learned how to do that, so we can bring it towards the bottom a little bit or in between. Thanks so much for watching. Again, my name is Shannon, and this is a dry brushing technique. We hope to catch you for some future beginner acrylic painting tutorials in our studio here at Embodied Art Studio. Don't forget to subscribe for some future videos to come.